NASA, beware! You're not the only ones that plan on colonizing the moon. Russia and China have recently announced their plan of creating their own joint base on the moon. However, this base differs from the one planned with the Artemis program, as it is supposed to have a very functional purpose of creating nuclear energy. See in detail what Russia and China are planning for this moon base, how will nuclear energy be used, and what this means for the future of lunar exploration. Join us as we take a look at Russia and China's plan to build a nuclear plant on the moon. But before we take a deeper look, we first need to understand what exactly are Russia and China planning on doing. Russia's own Roscosmos and CNSA partnership isn't anything new in the world of lunar and space exploration. In fact, 3 years ago in 2021, both agencies revealed their interest on building a shared base on the moon, named the International Lunar Research Station. This station was planned as a hub for all nations. However, with the recent rise of frosty relations between CNSA and NASA, as well as Roscosmos and NASA, this is highly unlikely. Instead, ELRS's development has now taken a turn in a different direction, serving as a bonding experience between the two agencies and countries, as well as a rival to NASA's own planned lunar base. On the 5th of March 2024, Roscosmos also announced that the two agencies will now attempt to build a nuclear reactor, which will primarily serve as a power source for the ILRS. In the words of Yuri Borisov, Roscosmos's general director, "Today we are seriously considering a project to deliver and install a power unit on the lunar surface together with our Chinese colleagues." However, it goes without saying that putting up a tent on the moon would be extremely hard, let alone creating both a base and an entire nuclear reactor next to it, which is why we must ask, how will this plant be constructed? Well, Roscosmos and CNSA are currently working on finding solutions to numerous rising issues when it comes to the construction of the plant itself, and at the same time for the base too. First is the construction process. Both agencies are in the process of designing and testing out robots that are specifically designed for constructing buildings in a lunar gravity environment. These robots will be specifically designed to perform the construction process completely remotely and autonomously, being monitored and, if necessary, controlled from Earth using satellites. However, before this happens, CNSA and Roscosmos will first have to develop their own spaceship that'll bring them to the moon. CNSA has announced that in the next 2 years, they'll have a rocket that'll be ready to plant the agency's boots on the moon by 2030. The Russians are, on the other hand, very much interested in exploring nuclear-powered ships, which will be designed to be fully reusable. These rockets will be used to transfer cargo and building materials for the ILRS to the moon. It is expected that the plant will be constructed before the base itself, as the robots will require a reliable source of power as soon as they can get it, and since solar panels aren't exactly reliable per se, switching to nuclear energy as soon as possible is definitely the way things will go down. However, with that in mind, we must ask, are there any reasons for concern? Well, yes. There are. First is the reliability of Roscosmos and their hypothetical capability of creating this station. Roscosmos has already shown to the world that they still aren't capable of landing on the moon, as their Luna 25 lander crashed onto the lunar surface, leaving a 33-foot wide crater in its wake. Seeing how this was their first lunar mission in the past 47 years, this is a valid concern point. On the other hand, we've also seen what kind of a disaster a nuclear plant can create on Earth with the Chernobyl catastrophe, as well as the Fukushima nuclear accident. We can only imagine how problematic a nuclear power plant can be in an environment such as the lunar one, especially with no direct human input to mitigate it. Finally, and probably the biggest concern about this, is the fact that the moon, just like Earth, will turn into a conflict zone for the West and the East. Instead of working towards a joint future of space exploration, the three biggest world powers have yet again decided to work against one another. But even with these issues on the horizon, it is undeniable that the plant, as well as the base, will serve a massive purpose for the future of humanity. So with that in mind, it's time for us to ask, what does this mean for the future of lunar exploration? The creation of the ILRS and its nuclear power plant will serve as the basis of the future of colonizing the moon, and by the looks of it, China and Russia will beat the US to it. The Artemis program is set to happen in 2026, which is only a couple of years earlier than what Roscosmos and CNSA expect for their lunar exploration mission. However, opting for an already well-proven way of powering the base and its equipment instead of experimenting will allow the two agencies to gain the upper hand when on the moon's surface. Furthermore, both bases will be built around the same time, seeing as the Artemis base camp is expected to be built well into the 2030s. The ILRS is also expected to be built in 2035, albeit we believe that both deadlines will be moved to 2040. But with all of this in mind, we have to say that the ILRS serves a greater purpose than just sheer lunar exploration and colonization. It will serve as the basis for Russian and Chinese space exploration, and will also serve as the first checkpoint for space exploration, not to mention that it will serve as a de facto simulation of what to expect in terms of creating colonies on other planets. However, as we've already mentioned, the base will also represent the permanence and the constancy of conflict, as, despite leaving their own planet behind, humans will carry and harbor with them their requisite for fray amongst themselves, no matter where they go.